Hey, what's going on guys, and welcome back to another ProGuides video. I'm Renox, and I'd love to bring you this great guide right now. Today, we're going to be discussing the age-old debate of the M4A1-S versus the M4A4. Ever since the release of the A1S, it has always been the question of which gun is better, and therefore which one you should be using. Through the years, it has always been going back and forth. For the past year or so though, the A4 has been definitely dominant, especially in the pro scene. But recently, it has been quite a bit less clear ever since the M4A1-S was buffed up to have a larger magazine as well as the price decrease. In today's meta, in general, most players still tend to keep using the A4, but at the same time, a lot of pros are starting to experiment with the A1S a little bit. In today's video, we're not trying to force one or the other onto you, but instead attempt to inform you about both options and their advantages. Before we do that though, you probably already guessed it, that's right of course, it's time for our question of the day. Today's question, and how could it not be, is which gun do you prefer, the M4A4 or the M4A1-S? Personally, I tend to use the M4A4 as I think it's a better all-round weapon and I feel like I'm personally more consistent with it. But whenever I feel like it, I'll switch to the A1 instead and play around with that for a bit as well. In general, I really think I'm able to use both guns and I don't really have a clear favorite. But what about you guys? Make sure to let us know in the comments down below. Let's start talking about the weapon stats of both the M4A4 and the M4A1-S first. Both guns are very viable, but which one is better for you, you will need to decide on your own. Starting off with the M4A4 has a faster rate of fire and therefore a lower time to kill. Basically, if you can control it, you'll be able to kill opponents faster than you could without it. And that being said, the A4 is much more difficult to control than the A1. On top of that, the A4 also has 5 extra bullets per mag and 25 bullets in reserve. That's why you'll usually see most pro players going with the A4 with a few exceptions here and there, or at least that's how it used to be. The A4 is just a better gun on paper if you have what it takes to control it. It just allows you to put out more bullets a second than you would ever be able to with the A1, meaning you can kill your opponents faster, meaning you can win an extra gunfight here and there, which again means extra rounds. The M4A1-S isn't a useless gun by any means though. It has the same damage per bullet as the A1, has an easier recoil pattern, and on top of that, a lower rate of fire which makes spraying with that gun even easier. Additionally, it doesn't have tracers and makes less sound, so if you manage to catch your opponents off guard from the side or from behind, you're much more likely to get a multi-kill as it will be harder for them to realize where they're getting shot from. Not only does it help with flanking though, but also when you're spamming through a smoke. We've all been spammed through a smoke sometimes, and whenever that happens, you'll always see exactly where you're getting shot from. You'll always see exactly where the bullets are coming from, even through a smoke because of the bullet tracers that light up. This sometimes allows us to take someone who's spamming through a smoke down with relative ease. If you're using the A1, this will not happen to you though, because there are no bullet tracers like there is with an AK or an A4. The advantages of the A1 don't end there though. Not only is the gun easier to control, but it's also more accurate, so you'll miss less shots due to randomness. Recently though, the game has changed a bit as the price of the A1S has been lowered by $200, now being sold for only $2,900 instead of the $3,100 charged for the A4. This may not seem like a lot honestly, but it really is a game changer. As we all know, CSGO is all about economy, managing your economy, buying around it, ecoing certain rounds, saving in rounds where the odds aren't in your favor, and so much more. It's fair to say that teams who manage their economy well will have a much better chance at winning games than those who don't. If you've been playing CSGO for a little while now, you might remember how the Krieg and the AUG always used to cost 300 extra above the AKs and M4s respectively. And for that reason, essentially no one was using these guns, except for in the lower ranks, where people made fun of others for using them, where they were nicknamed noob guns or COD guns, and no one dared to ever buy them, especially in pro play. At some point, the devs of CSGO decided to lower the price of both of them by $250, meaning that they were, instead of being $300 more expensive than the regular rifles now on their side, now just 50 extra. At first, people realized the AUG was overpowered and started using the hell out of it. Before, you would see a CT side is doing really well because you would notice they would have 5 AKs, but you'd notice a T side is going strong because they had 5 AUGs. This madness continued until the AUG got nerfed and people stopped using it as much, even though it was still very much viable. It was only then that people started realizing that the SG-556, also known as the Krieg, was even better than the AUG ever was. Sure, it was a bit hard getting used to, but as soon as you did, it was the best rifle CSGO had ever seen, and that didn't change until they massively nerfed the fire rate. The point I'm trying to make here is that the economy is infinitely important to CS, so important even that the entire pro scene did not realize which guns were the best simply because the gun that they were using was $300 cheaper, although much worse. Even if pro players can't realize that they're not using the best guns they could be, then that shows how important the economy in CS is, and that extra $200 does matter. Sure, $200 might only be the price of a single flashbang, but a single flashbang can change the outcome of a round, and sometimes $200 is the difference between being able to have a rifle or being able to buy. So yes, $200 does matter. Alright, so to summarize, the M4A4 has a higher fire rate, which means a lower time to kill. It also has 5 extra bullets per mag and 25 extra bullets in reserve, totaling for 30 bullets per magazine and 90 spare. It is priced at $3,100. The M4A1 has a lower fire rate, which means a higher time to kill, a smaller magazine of only 25 bullets and only 75 bullets in reserve, but is easier to control, more accurate, allows for easier multi-kills when you're not spotted right away due to its silencer, also it's better to spam through smokes, and last, but as you know, certainly not least, is $200 cheaper, being sold for $2,900. So which gun is better for which situation? Well, we already talked about it a little bit, but let's go more in depth. You probably want to have an A4 if you're playing a standard angle on a site. If you do that, you're going to get spotted regardless, so the suppressor doesn't really matter all that much. You'll also need to have the highest DPS possible, and you're likely going to be facing a lot of players at once, so the extra bullets will really help. With an A4, you'll be able to quickly spray down a few opponents as they're rushing you, killing them much faster than you would have with an A1, which means you'll be taking less damage each time you peek, as your peeks will probably be shorter. In general, if you think you'll be dealing with a lot of opponents at once, an A4 will likely be better. When it comes to the A1, there's also definitely some situations where it's much more viable than its A4 counterpart. We already mentioned how it's better when you're on the flank, as your opponents will take a longer time to realize where they're getting shot from until it's too late, much like with the USP, and we already mentioned how if you're spraying through a smoke with the A1, there won't be any bullet tracers to give away your exact position like with the A4. But that is not all. The A1 also comes with the better long range if you're taking a fight. If you're fighting B short on Mirage from bench, for example, having an A1 instead of an A4 makes it so much easier. The A1 is always easier to control than the A4 is, but the longer the range, the more you'll notice it. When you're spraying at a long range like bench to short or dust to pit to sight, the better accuracy and easier spray will truly show itself in its fullest effect. Experienced Counter-Strike players might feel that spraying is always easy enough, but no one in their right mind would spray from such a long distance with an M4A4. With the A1-S though, it's not a problem. It will basically still feel like there's no recoil at all. Another scenario where you might want to equip the A1 over the A4 is if you're having more to spend on your half-buy rounds. If you hate full ecoing and always like to at least buy a pistol on these rounds, then equipping the A1 will allow you to do that much more freely. I know I certainly like to half buy a deagle whenever I can, and honestly, a lot of the time it allows me to steal an extra round here and there, or at least get a few extra kills. And yeah, I know I'm giving the A1 a lot of credit at the moment, and it may seem like it has so many upsides and the A4 only really has one, being able to kill faster as long as you hit your shots. But this is of course not something you should underestimate either. Time to kill is super important in Counter-Strike, in a game where oftentimes a fraction of a second can change the outcome of fights or even rounds entirely. So if you're able to kill faster with the A4, that's a massive benefit, possibly more important than all of the A1's benefits combined. So I guess that begs the question, which one is the better gun and which one should you be using? After a long discussion with the entire ProGuides team, we've decided the answer is, yeah, I don't really know. It depends really. Sure, if you have amazing spray control and can hit every shot with the A4, you'll probably want to use that, as honestly, the time to kill can make it such a big difference in a lot of situations. For the less fortunate though, if you're not Xantares or Get Right, you should definitely consider using the M4A1-S or at least give it a fair shot. I know everyone hates change, so going away from what we're used to is going to be a bit painful, but I'd really recommend everyone at least try the other option. Maybe you'll like it much more without having ever realized it until then. Trying something new and giving it a fair chance may be difficult, but honestly, it's so worth it. I for one know a lot of pro players would have loved to realize the Krieg and the AUG were so good so much earlier, but that of course didn't happen until the price got decreased and people decided to give it a fair shot again. Really makes you think if there's more overpowered guns just lying about undiscovered. I'd like to challenge you all to go out and be the guy that dares to experiment and test out all of the guns that you might think are viable. Of course, starting with the M4 you've been ignoring all your career. When it comes to which one is really the best, it's honestly very difficult to just outright choose one. Instead, you should outweigh the advantages of both the A4 and A1-S, decide which one you think is the best, and try the other one regardless. The only way you'll really know which one feels better for you is by just experimenting and figuring it out that way. In general, you could say the higher the skill level, the more valuable the A4 becomes, and the lower in the ranks you go, the better the A1 becomes, relatively due to people having worse spray and gun control. But it also isn't just that black and white, because personal preference is very much a factor as well. Well guys, unfortunately, that is going to be all for now. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to let us know by leaving a like, subscribing, and also hitting that notification bell so that in the future, you'll always be notified whenever we upload. That way, you'll never have to miss out on a chance to improve again. While you're at it, make sure to check out ProGuides.com as well. We have some of the world's best coaching on there, as well as the master course to Counter-Strike made by Simple himself. With all that said, I wish you a great rest of your day and best of luck in improving.